Hello, everybody,
Hey.
or all two of you. Um, Today we got a number of things we're going to look at. Christina's going to show us some stuff. Then we're going to work through some data model stuff. That's the big picture. This is my backyard. I'm actually not being a smartass. That's actually my backyard across a giant body of water. But it is a picture I took a few days ago. If anybody's
Must be
curious or
nice.
cares, it's pretty neat. It gets cold sometimes, but it's pretty neat. Um, So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get you to share your screen, and I'm going to position it so that everybody will be able to see it okay. So if you could go ahead and do that, I'll get
Yep.
it situated.
Okay. Do you see it?
Yep, give me just a second though. I always have to, it goes full screen and then I have to resize accordingly. Well, actually, I see a black screen.
How about now?
Now I see a screen. Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Okay, give me just a few more seconds here. Yeah, there we go. All right, take it away.
Okay, y'all. So we have done a lot of updates. I mean, not too much, but a good amount of updates regarding the Trux app. What I have done on the front end was pretty much implement this baby right here. So right now, what you're looking at is very bare bones implementation of a couple things. So the view that you see right here, no pun intended, is using something called Viewify. I think it's a spinoff on Beautify, but that is just a very simple framework for styling your components, as well as making sure it's responsive and things like that. If we look, actually, Viewify, it's pretty cool. It's based off of Google's material design, and they've got some pretty good documentation around how to get started, supported browsers, things like that. If we go look at their components, a lot of the things that they have here are pretty simple to use. So if you want to check out the code and implement this within your project, your Vue.js project, it's pretty easy. All you have to really do is copy and paste. Let me try and bring up the code as well. Let's see if I move that. Okay. Can we see the code?
I still see the browser window.
Oh man, I wonder if it's doing that weird thing. 1 second. I think I have to share the entire desktop.
Oh, that might be. Oh,
Okay.
somebody was saying. Oh, hold on. Silly Zoom. It went full screen on me, and then let me fix it real quick. Oh, it should be okay. Oh yeah, there it goes. Let's hear. Disoch was saying. Well, first it says hello, but I watched a previous episode. It was mentioned that DataScript was considered, but some problems came up with it. As someone who is familiar with DataScript, I'm curious what it was. Did we look at DataScript?
Sorry, what are you referring to?
I I'm not sure. What do you? I don't know what DataScript is. Disoch. Disoch.
Well, what are you looking at?
Oh, the chat on Twitch.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, no. I don't have it open at the moment. Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah, I don't. Did we? talk about that? I'm drawing a complete blank on having discussed that previously.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, yeah, maybe I don't know. Maybe we're all crazy. So says okay. Maybe I'm crazy. That's what they
Okay.
said. Yeah, maybe it'll pop into my head later, but I don't remember us talking about that. Just view and
Yeah,
a bunch of
so
other stuff. Yeah.
getting back to essentially what's going on here. What I'm doing is I created a folder, a plugin folder. So this will be like third-party applications, things that we want to import into our project.
Okay.
So Viewtify is being imported here into the plugin folder, and we are calling it at our app view. And this is how it's essentially just getting implemented already. Let me go to index. Yeah, and so we're also implementing some material icons here as well that sort of just fits with the overall style. But what's really cool about this is if you go to this toolbar, right? So this toolbar is actually from Viewtify. So all I had to do was go back to their component library and check out what sort of style I wanted to accomplish here. And the simple thing is they have this prefix here, v-toolbar, and you can style it however they want. It also, comes with a lot of styling out of the box, which is great. So you'll notice here, I don't have any styling presently. And if we go to the app, it already has styles for us, which is really great. So that's a little bit about Viewtify. Again, we'll add on to this as we go, especially once we get the data in here. But also another thing I implemented was the maps. So I initialized an API under Google Maps. And as of recent, I want to say maybe like less than a year ago, Google Maps switched over from being free. The good thing is it's still free for us, depending on how many searches that we make. So hopefully, we'll keep that limit pretty low since not many people are using it right now. But if it does happen to take off, I might be expensing that later.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what I've done is created a utility folder called utils, and within that, I've created the Google Maps JS file. A big reason why I wanted to go with Google Maps, just the bare bones JavaScript version versus a plugin. There actually is a plugin out right now that's pretty useful for it.
Yeah.
I think it's called Google Maps 2 View something. Google Map Vue.js. Yeah, View 2 Google Maps. So this is actually really popular that I have seen. However, this doesn't really tell you what's going on behind the scenes, especially since we do want to eventually get a lot more data in this app.
Right.
I don't want us to be restricted, right?
Yeah.
So essentially, we've got our API key. We are going ahead and initializing this, right? So here we can see that the promise handles the initialization status of the Google Maps script. And what I'm doing now is saying, hey, if this is initialized, then go ahead and return this init promise to us. So essentially what's happening is if it's successfully loaded, go ahead and call back this function. So pretty simple. Here you can see we're injecting this into the head of our HTML to go ahead and start loading our project. The good thing about this is it is a separate file, so we are not putting this into our index.html file directly, but we are initializing it once we import that. So that's a really great thing about component driven development, which I really appreciate.
Cool.
In here, I've created a separate component. So this is the Google Map.view, and this is what will be reused, right? So if we have, for example, another route where, you know, we've got Seattle and we've got Charlotte, maybe that'll be on a separate route.
Mm-hmm.
The cool thing about this is we can go ahead and reuse this in multiple areas, and it will only be called, you know, specifically for whatever city we're calling.
Right.
For right now, I've put in some dummy data for our locations. And this is all for Charlotte, North Carolina. So I went ahead and Googled a couple of food trucks that seem to have set positions. I don't know if they really do or not, but put in some dummy data. And what I've got going on here is we are then applying this map to Charlotte, North Carolina. So what's really cool, this geocoder, all I had to write was Charlotte, North Carolina, and it found, Google Maps was able to find that for me without having to put in anything, you know, like a Latin long, like
Right.
I did up above, which was really nice. So I then created a variable called markers. And essentially, when that's clicked, the map will zoom into that cluster position. And that is what you see here. So we not only have our regular markers, but we also have the cluster. So when you click the cluster, that is the function that's being called. And I also added this click handler to go ahead and when you click on that one specific marker from the cluster,
Oh
it
yeah.
will zoom in again. So if you do that,
Is 17 like the magnification into the map or something?
yep, exactly.
Cool.
I think they had it defaulted at like 20,
Mm-hmm.
but that was way too far.
You're like
Didn't really
stuck in the street.
say that again.
It's like you end up stuck in the street or something.
Yeah, it would zoom in into the cluster and then it would zoom out. So it looked kind of funky.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, and then otherwise in terms of the width and the height, I set it to the vertical width and height of your browser. So depending on whatever that is, it might be a lot bigger. And we are calling it here with that class. And if you go back to our main, where is it? App view. Yeah, so in the template, I am just calling the component Google Map.
Okay.
I am initializing or importing it here. And if you don't put this Google Map within the components, it's going to freak out on you.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, be sure to do that. I've been stuck trying to learn this a couple of times because there are 3 different steps, right? And I'm so used to having separate files.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the new things that I'm learning is like, hey, it's all here on one template. You don't need to keep jumping around. So that's also a really nice thing about this. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it on the front end. As we keep going, the really great thing is we can modify this as we go and really build upon it. I will say this was pretty simple to start up in, you know, the week that I've really been actively coding.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm really excited to learn a lot more about it. Building this was super simple, way easier than Angular.
Very cool. That's
Yeah.
that's one of the things that Vue has been becoming known for. Is that
Oh yeah,
things
yeah.
like fit together and make more sense than
Mhm.
some of the other more how would I put it, gargantuan frameworks.
Yeah, especially, like us building a quick MVP, I think this is great. So,
Yeah. No, that looks good. I like that. I like that you got the little the I don't even, what do you call the thing with the two?
the cluster.
It's just a cluster. There's a word where we're going to get it overloaded when we start talking about
Yeah,
data.
right.
I mean, it makes
They
sense though.
might
It's like
they
location
might
cluster,
call it markers, actually. I think I'm just,
marker cluster. Yeah.
I've got cluster on the mind. So,
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes sense in both contexts though.
oh no,
Uh,
yeah, they call it a cluster. So,
yeah. Cool. Yeah, I like that. I like there when there's that little bit of extra kind of user experience where it just
yeah.
simplifies. You see the clump instead of it trying to draw out 8 million. It makes it work technically better, and it's easier to look at too and like figure out visually at a quick glance of what's going on. The,
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to implement that just so we had a very basic example of what that looks like,
mhm.
as well as show us, hey, there are other markers outside of this cluster. So,
Yeah. What is that what that is? That's that third long lat is the one way up there on the
yep.
northwest there?
It,
Cool.
yeah.
Okay. I was wondering about that for a second. I was like, I think I saw 3, and that makes
Yeah.
sense then.
Yeah. I personally really like, I mean, I was looking for other free alternatives other than Google Maps,
Mhm.
but it's just so fleshed out and the documentation is so easy to get started in that, I mean, for our needs, knowing that it's not going to, you know, be, I mean, maybe we'll launch it. Who knows how far it
Yeah.
goes, but as for our needs right now, to me, it's perfect.
Yeah. Now Google's a great place to start with. I know there's the cost concern if something gets big. And I'm, if I recall correctly, it was somewhat obvious when they invoked pricing on maps that it was oriented directly at nailing Apple, because Apple was the largest Google Maps user by
Yeah,
like
right.
multiple orders of magnitude.
Yeah.
So, and they've never been super friendly.
Mhm.
So they just they hit them with it. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I get a distinctive notion that our website won't get that big.
Right. Yeah.
So let's see here. All right, that looks cool. Dun, dun, dun. Now, how fast can I switch back to the other screen? That is always the challenge with this contraption.
Yeah, I think the what's good for me learning this is being new to DataStax and essentially learning about data modeling and things like that. Being new to all of this is definitely can be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the good thing is the fact that we did go with Vue, it seems a lot more intuitive and almost like, a definitely less stressful, I would say.
Nice. That's good. I'm always aiming for less stressful.
Yeah.
um, so far, I like everything I've looked at with it too, uh, which is which is pretty cool. I've got tons of experience building web interfaces, but it's always been. I mean, it goes all the way back to like, well, here's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and we have nothing. To, oh,
Right.
here's jQuery and my life is revolutionized, to, oh, now we have React and Angular and all these other things. So figure out what soup you want to boil and then go from there. So
Yeah.
getting kind of back into looking at more of that now, looking at Vue instantly makes me think, oh, this is the good parts of the web development that I've done in the past, which I've
Oh,
enjoyed.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus the, oh dear, what's going to happen next? Like I've looked at some code bases and I'm just, no, let's not. So
Also,
that's
the fact
cool.
that there's, like crappy documentation and over half of them.
Yeah,
That's where developer advocates come in.
seriously. Disoc said, I have no idea how I'm supposed to say that nickname or name. I don't know. I'm not that well versed. But they
Yeah.
say I like to use leaflet maps when I can
Oh,
for those reasons. So that makes me curious because I don't know what leaflet maps are.
I
Is that a
am going to Google that.
cool?
JavaScript library for interactive maps.
Ah, I'm going to in the background pull that up. So leaflet maps. Is this the one you're talking about, Disoc? Leaflet leading open source library. Oh, and it uses OpenStreetMaps. Interesting.
Yeah, when I was researching, OpenStreetMaps was going to be my second option. So, with that being said, I feel like this would be a good alternative.
Yeah. And who knows? Maybe we'll get to that point. We have so many other things to do for it, though.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've heard good things about OpenStreetMap too, just from conversations with other people that have used it, and I know of a number of companies, some with some pretty hefty mapping requirements that have moved to OpenStreetMap and been very happy with it. I know two specific apps that I use personally that have used OpenStreetMaps a lot. One is Amtrak actually tracks the GPS location of all its trains across the entire country and
Mm.
into Canada using OpenStreetMaps, which is super cool because you can see the little
Oh, wow.
dots of where they are all over the country. And they use the little cluster thing we use because like where there's a lot of trains going places like the Northeast corridor between New York and DC, say, you can't just show like all of them on the map because there's like 100 of them or something going somewhere. So you zoom in and it shows them all on the different little spots. The other app that I've seen, I'm like 90% sure they shifted to it a while back, was Strava, the bicycle tracking app.
I have that.
Yeah, they switched to it, which is
Oh,
interesting. And one of the reasons that I found it so interesting is because Google Maps has done so much work setting up and figuring out where bike routes are, but also walking routes, like where you can, where steps are, like hidden steps and hidden little pathways in cities and stuff. That I was like,
yeah.
oh dear, how are they going to do that and actually still have effective mapping? Like is it going to accidentally say you're in the middle of an interstate or that you've fallen off a cliff? Like, how is that going to work? And so far, it's been perfect. Like, there's been no problems with it. I've been pretty impressed. And even when I go in and do a map tracking, like to track where a route is going to go, like a prospective route where I'll ride, it knows where all those routes are. So somebody has actually gone in and added all that data. So I was super stoked to see them shift, and that data is available so that they can work with it, which is cool.
Yeah. No, that's cool.
So leaflet maps, yeah, that one's getting bookmarked. That's cool. Let's see here. Can I do? There we go. Oh, that's a nice little logo. I just dragged it on my desktop. All right. Let's see here. The next thing I think we were gonna focus on is figuring out some data stuff.
Yeah.
So let me get leaflet out of here. Oh, before that, let's take a minute and look at the PR.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'll go back to where it was. Let's see here. So there's two PRs actually, one from you and one from me. There we go. So the one I put in, what did I do? I added some infrastructure stuff so
Mhm.
that I could build out a data model on an actual working Cassandra node so that I have something to work with, right? Similar to, you know, running a website.
Yeah.
So I got that running.
Mhm.
Let's see, I think that's mostly in this commit. Yeah, so I put in a dev up.shell script and a dev down.shell script. Theoretically, I believe that it should work seamlessly on either Mac or Linux. Ancient Coder, thank you for following. Welcome to this other stream where you get to see my face. So yeah, I got the up script so you can launch and then build out and use it against the website, or if you're just working in the database or whatever. Pretty easy. And then the dev down just takes all of that down and tears it down so it doesn't eat up resources when you're doing other stuff. And it should work Mac, Linux, A-OK. If somebody's
Mhm.
using Windows, then they need to flip the switches around and the pertinent stuff. But the main gist of it should work even on Windows.
So, being new to the backend realm, it, dev up and dev down, is that typically normal jargon, like for file naming conventions?
Probably yes, no. I mean, I see all sorts of stuff all the time, like start, destroy, explode,
Okay.
just like usually or create. Like people kind of flip around with
Mhm.
the words, and they do this in different ways. Like some people use oh, I'm trying to think of the thing where you can spin up multiple instances, swarm or whatever. There's different things you can use, and of course, like one of the really popular ones is Kubernetes, but we're not really
Mhm.
running a whole Kubernetes thing on our machines, so I just wanted to make it where it's just like one little simple Docker container starts up, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
And to also make it a little easier to deal with as we work through it. So let me go to my repo here. Oh, I'm pulling it up in GitHub. I can show you on the machine. It looks better. So here's the dev up script. So even with latency, it should show now. So basically what I do is first I set up a network. I give it a name, IP, subnet, and gateway. The IP, subnet, and gateway basically need to exist so that you have an IP to assign to the server node, which will have Cassandra on it. The subnet basically designates a range of IPs that you can use, like if we wanted to have more than one, even though we just have one. And then the gateway basically tells the server, see, I put the server in this network, and having a gateway is basically the gateway out, so it can communicate in and out to the internet and stuff like that. So and then I gave it a network name, so I just called it TruxNet, and then Cassandra name for the particular server node, which is Cassie's Trux. Then I do Docker network create, give it the subnet, the gateway, set it attachable, which basically means the network is set up and I can attach servers to it so that the server will run and operate within that network. And then the next step, I just do Docker run, give it the name so that it'll name the container that thing, then tell it the network that it's going to be attached to, give it its IP, and there's another environment variable called Cassandra broadcast address, and that's pertinent to Cassandra itself. Just telling Cassandra, this is going to be your IP that you're going to communicate from. And then the -IT -D is, I might have just forgotten, iterative terminal disconnected or detached. That's what it stands for. Basically, what that means is once you have gotten the image and you start it up, run it in the background. Like I don't need to see it. I don't need to do anything with it from directly interfacing with the container. So just run back there and like an application is going to attach to it, right? So I'm not going to log into that instance or do anything like that. So those things get that running in the background. And then I say which version of Cassandra I want. And at this point, I'm just using Cassandra, and then I've tagged it 3.11.4. And that just gives me Cassandra version 3.11.4. Now, eventually, we'll flip this to DataStax Enterprise, and we'll use some of those features later on. Like we'll dig into graph and some of those cool things, and we can like draw correlations between where carts are and stuff. But for right now, I just wanted to get started, so I had something to build basically the schema of data against. So that's what this is.
Cool.
Then by naming those things, when I did the dev down script, I just say stop Cassandra, remove Cassandra, and then remove the network. So that way there's no conflicts with stuff after the fact. And then the only other two things that I have in this directory, which is in our repo, is I have a notes file where I'm just taking notes of, this was basically, oh, it looks funny that way. There we go. I was just trying to think through what we would need. Like, are we going to have users? We're going to have trucks, because that's what this is all about. And then maybe menus, the location, and schedule of like where it will be, when the truck will be at that location, that type of thing. And I was trying to write through the conceptual ideas of what we would need in different views and different states of the application.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a markdown file. It doesn't do anything. It's literally just me brainstorming.
No, that's good to see.
And then data migrations is literally just there for us and anybody else that would look at this application. I'm just starting to add notes about what's in this directory and why it's there, basically. And right now I just have dev up and dev down. And then I'm going to add some more details around. The next bit is, actually, let's do, how do I open the terminal in here? Remember how to open the terminal. I don't remember, so I'm going to open the terminal the normal way.
The old-fashioned way.
Yeah, I'm just going to open it right up. So in the terminal, there's the files, dev up, dev down, and then it has blah, 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 .up.cql and blah, 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 .down.cql. And I'll talk more about that in just a minute. But to get the environment going, first thing I'm actually going to do is just say Docker, network, and list. And I do that just to see what I already have, because one thing I have found is sometimes Docker will bring things down, like your whole machine.
Oh, lovely.
It's usually a weird combination of things. Like I have to do something pretty weird, like start a database server, add ridiculous amounts of RAM that it doesn't need or shouldn't have, and then try to reboot it and then delete the network at the same time, and then it crashes the machine and I have to reboot, which generally isn't a big deal. But I like to look, because if it's just got the default stuff, it's much easier to work from the basis of, oh, I can start XYZ things and that won't crash nothing. But yeah, I've done a lot of crashing lately, so I've picked up habits to not do that. So right now, Docker starts out with bridge, host, and none as default networks. I think these you can't even delete, but even if you could, you shouldn't, just because they're defaults. They're there for specific things, and it ensures that other containers or whatever else you're trying to do with it just works. In our context, though, I like to create a network, and the specific reason I do that is with Cassandra, if you have one node or you go multiple nodes, each node has to have an IP, right? Because it's going to work with an IP and a port, and the port number needs to be the same on every node. And because of that, you can't just use like a default Docker container, which will use your local host address, right? It'd run into all sorts of conflicts. So the easiest way that I've found to resolve that really quickly is you create a network and give it that subnet, just like I did. And by giving it the subnet, then you can specifically designate the IPs you want for your node.
Great.
Yeah. So that's that's what I've done here. And then if I say dev dash up and just run that, we get big, crazy, unique identifiers, which basically are the response of I've created a network and now you have a container running. So if I say Docker PS, which is to, I don't actually know what PS stands for, but basically what it does is it lists out which containers are running. So right now, I now have Cassandra 3.114 running, and it's been up for 19 seconds, blah, 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 and it shows the ports that are open. So like we got 7000, 7001 for TCP, 7199, 9042, 9160. The one that we need to know about, though, that we're going to use to interact with from our application, or at this point to create our data schemas to call, is 9042, and that's our standard port. Whenever you install Cassandra on a machine directly, the default port is always 9042 to connect to. So you can connect to it with CQLSH, the SQL shell, and a lot of other tools you can connect directly to it with it too. I think there's a plugin for Visual Studio Code. There's a plugin for all the JetBrains stuff, and then there's also DataGrip, which is what I'm using here.
So none of these numbers will change.
Under our current setup, that is correct. They will not change. They're all set. And the IP, since I created the network, I'm able to set the IP too. That's one thing that usually when you deploy a cluster out into a cloud or something, you may not actually know which IP it is. You have to like go look for it to figure it out.
Oh.
Yeah. So since I want to be able to write static scripts and be able to set a connection in my editor, I wanted a static IP so that I didn't have to change it every single time and try to like reconnect and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we're up and running there. Now I can open up my IDE, DataGrip. And then, for instance, like we'll take a look at this CQL. I can say, all right, let me go in here and pick a data source. I think I deleted them last time. Yeah. So in here, there's two ways in DataGrip that I can do this. And there's probably a lot of other ways too, since it's primarily a data tool. There's a lot of ways to connect to a data source. And once you connect to the data source, then you can actually run the scripts that you have right in front of you against that particular data source. And in this case, we want to get connected to our Apache Cassandra node.
Is DataGrip your favorite that you've used?
Currently, yes. I like it a lot.
Okay.
One of the reasons too is, as you can see here, I'll make it a little bit bigger and see if I can get this full list. Over here to the left side, they have everything you can practically think of. Exasol, ClickHouse, Azure SQL Database, Apache Hive, Amazon Redshift, Apache Cassandra, Derby, IBM DB2, which is like a 40-year-old database at this point, MariaDB, SQL Server, MySQL, and just there's a ton of them. And this is not all of them. There's other ones you can go get. But the fact that it gives you the ability to connect to so many different databases, it gives you the possibility to work from one interface and deal with whatever database that you need to deal with pretty much. And I like to be able to do that. It's in the past, I've routinely like to work with, say, Oracle, SQL Server, Cassandra, and then like something else comes up. I've had to use in the past like 3 or 4 different interfaces, and that means I'm bringing them up, and then I have 4 different apps running. I'm trying to remember what I just did in each one, and then moving around. It gets real cumbersome trying to keep up with everything. So let's see here. Just on another one here real quick, I'll show you. For each of those, they just have a different driver out there, and you just click download driver. It'll download it, and boom, it's ready to connect. And I, of course, already have the Cassandra driver, and it lists the license and all that good jazz. So you're pretty much ready to go once you have a driver. So let's here go with this one, and then, oh joy, I've forgotten my IP. It is 172.26.03. So I just replaced localhost with that, and you'll see it already has the default 9042 for the port. Since this is a default installation of Cassandra, there is no username and password at this point. It's just a wide open node. And I also don't have a key space yet. All I want to do is verify a connection to the server at this point. So test connection, and there we go. Thumbs up. It has detected the version correctly, 3.114, states which JDBC driver it is, and all that good jazz. So we're ready to go there. If I hit OK, I can now do a whole bunch of stuff.
That looked so easy.
It is. I like to keep things that way
less
too.
Intimidating than I thought.
Yeah. Wait till I show you the rest, and then you'll be like, "Oh, this is not hard at all."
This is what you guys do all day?
Yep. I honestly think, like, once someone gets familiar with the pertinent querying language to help build the structure and everything in the database, the hard part becomes trying to just think through how you need data.
Right.
When you, at whatever particular time it is. Like if you're in an app and you have a search screen and you want to find, I don't know, like, well, with food trucks, for example, you want the truck, the location, and is it in that place right now, in that location? And it maybe like menu data or something like that. But there's this pertinent little pieces that you need to query on, and putting together a table with that data to be queried on is where stuff starts to get a little tricky, because you got to think, you really have to think that through ahead of time to be able to build it and then make sure it's populated appropriately.
Yeah. When I was in boot camp, one of the things so DataStax has a boot camp for newbies, AKA me. And one of the benefits to that was data modeling and learning about, hey, this is what you ideally should do before you even start your project. And that to me was very useful, because I heard some of the other people, that have been doing this for 10 plus years or whatever, they thought that was really bizarre, I guess. They were like, well, how do you know? You don't have any data yet. Like, how do you create it? But I personally thought that made more sense for, I guess because I don't know any differently, right?
Yeah.
To me, that makes the most sense.
As someone who has gone through the gamut of the academic side of things and been taught, like, oh, you need to do this and da 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 da, all this stuff before you even do anything on the application side. The traditional ways that a lot of academia have taught how to build a database, I have come to find don't work that well, and I'm frustrated that people were taught and became entrenched in those mindsets. And what you just told me makes me so happy about people getting into development now, because they're not entrenched in, well, I need to make my highly referentially integral database thing with all these tight coupled forceful things to make sure the data's safe. And it's like, well, okay,
and I have no idea what that means.
and that's kind of good, because like the tendency now is to, it's starting to be more taught this way, but the tendency now I see, and I'm so happy, is they look at the application first and start to determine, like, well, what do I really need to see?
Right.
And I think some of that came from just learned experience of the industry too. Like, for example, where Apache Cassandra even came from. Facebook had been using like Oracle and some of these other traditional databases, and they just ran into something that was just a total roadblock. They couldn't search inbox messages. Like, the messages in the chat just couldn't be searched anymore. They were dying. The queries were dying. They weren't responsive enough. So they started looking at solutions, and that's what Cassandra was born out of, was something that was highly scalable and could query amazingly fast.
Yeah.
But before that, they had tried to follow the traditional mode, and they built this like very tightly coupled thing. And then when they needed to change a few pieces around, it became a huge problem. So they literally sat down and started rewriting an entire database, which of course is awesome because now we got Apache Cassandra. But it was a hurdle to step over, and I'm glad that the industry did that, and that people now are not being indoctrinated to, well, here's how you have to do it.
Right.
Like, no,
I also think too, like, within the last 100 years, technology has changed so much. And with especially front end, like looking at this from a front end perspective, seeing it go from having, usually websites would already have the data and all it would be is just, very basic HTML on a screen and there was your data. With the dawn of user experience and, all of these various practices on the front end and having it be a customer driven approach first. I think that's another thing too, where it's like, hey, you can't be as strict as you used to be, right? Because now, like you were saying, you look at the application first and you look at the user experience first, and how are we going to make that the most appealing, the easiest, most intuitive for users, and then work our way from there.
Yep, very much so. I'm curious to ask, since Ancient Coder is called Ancient Coder, I wonder what their thoughts are on this. They might have some ancient historical context for us.
Some COBOL.
Yeah. Oh, I thank Mississippi for teaching me COBOL. It was the how do I put it? The academic criteria had only gotten to like the next level languages in concept, but was still teaching COBOL to basically everybody.
Wow.
So I actually wrote some COBOL. It's not particularly a bad language. I mean, it just reads like a really bad bank statement. That's what it reads like.
Boring.
Yeah, exactly. Take a nap now.
Yeah.
So let's see here. What we're doing.
Ancient by name only.
Yeah. Noted for future reference. All right. So I'll tell you some of the things I did here just for context, and then we can delete it all and start from wherever, or use some of it, whatever we want to do. So in my CQL code, and the way I was writing these CQL files was with the context of schema migrations. The idea behind schema migrations is as you create new schema, new tables, new things, figure out new places you need to store data or whatever, you use migrations to move to that next level for your development environments, and to some degree production. It's a little bit more tricky with Cassandra just because we're talking about like a cluster of nodes. But you build out the tables and maybe even put in some test data, and you do it additively, which means you don't update things. You either add things only, or you completely drop and remove things. So that way you don't end up in any weird broken states for your data schema. So with that said, just for some general criteria around the concept, you have the way I do the files in migrations, and you'll see this in any project that has schema migrations will generally have a file that's called something something dot up dot whatever, and then it'll have a something something dot down dot whatever. And that's the same for whether you're doing Postgres or Apache Cassandra or MySQL or SQL Server or whatever. Also, I like to add the date at the front, and I always put the time, even if I'm only writing like one of these per day or per week or whatever. the idea is that maybe I'll get super productive and write 5 or 6. I don't know. If I put the time, then it differentiates a little bit more and breaks out the files easier. Then I just put a simple description or some type of identifier just for visual acuity so that I can see first SSOR tables. So I have an idea of what I did on that particular date.
Mm.
And in this context, I actually went out and looked this up because I was trying to think, like, what do they call the table that holds basically the system of record? I knew they had an acronym or something for it, and I looked it up and I found out it's called Source System of Record.
Okay.
And I decided, all right, I'm going to make a key space to put all the tables in, to store the data in, that will start out as our source system of record. And these will basically be the tables that we use as our source system to check against whenever we're making other tables for queries or anything like that, where we have to create custom sets of data that might be denormalized redundant data. We can always check back and be sure that we're getting it against these tables. So that's the idea behind that. Will it hold out throughout the whole application development that we do? I don't know. It's just an idea at this point.
Yeah.
So I started out with the key space, and then I added Trux right here, with some pertinent things here. So in Cassandra, it's not schemaless. It has particular data types that you can assign to your various entities throughout the database in your tables. And then you also have to have a designated primary key that should be unique. So my first thing I did here was went with name and phone, because I assume that the Trux will have a phone. They'll have a cell or something like that, and they'll have a name. And then I wanted to be able to add details, but I wanted details to kind of be derived from an almost schemaless notion. So what I decided was I would make that a map data type, because then I can just do a key value, and I can do as many key values that I want to inside of that particular column entity, right? So details is basically where I would inject JSON. So we can grow how many things we have in that, or shrink, or whatever we want to do.
Cool.
Then I added an IDE where we can add UUID, and then type. Why did I put that? Oh, type, food type. That's what I was thinking with that one. And then for primary key, I just made it name and phone. My thought was that the most likely way we would search to find or want to query against and find a particular truck would be by the name and possibly by the phone number. So I put that in the primary key, gives us the ability to search based on those two things. This stuff is generated and basically has to do with the particular node's development environment, not particularly something that we need to dig into here. And I'll show you how I got a hold of that in just a minute, because DataGrip actually generated that to do very specific caching. And then the next thing I did is I added a users table. And I'm going to actually do this. Bloop. And delete that for right now. And I'll actually delete this stuff too, just to add emphasis that it's not super pertinent to the actual creation of these things. So there is our key space and our table. Key space will be created, then the table will be created. And if I go up here and I just select everything and then hit run, it should, yep. So basically what it's saying is, all right, you have a console, or do you want a new console open to run this in? So new console is just going to pop open a new tab and run it in that new tab. But I'm just going to say, no, run it in the console that I already have. And it'll run it, and then, bloop, there we go. In 2 seconds, it ran it, and we can see over here in key spaces, I now have Trux source system of record, and the Trux table is in there. And we can see the name, phone, has a little shiny golden key to designate that it's part of the primary key. And
Cool.
then details, ID, and type are just regular columnar entities within Trux. And we're basically set. We could add stuff to Trux at this point.
Was that those icons, was that a plugin?
I know DataGrip has icons by default,
Mhm.
but I actually think these icons are some part of a material design that they have for DataGrip that I installed.
I was going to say, that's really neat.
Yeah, they are pretty cool. And
Yeah.
it's so nice to be able to look at it this way too. And just, you can look at it and see exactly how things are laid out and what's what much quicker than trying to look through CQL, that's all like jammed together and everything. So I really like to be able to have an interface like this. It just gives us an ability to like scroll through and look at things much quicker than trying to dig through code and continuously running things like describe table, describe this, and then looking at the massive results that spit back out.
Yeah. I worked a little bit with MySQL when I was a teaching assistant, and that was, I mean, the UI for that is just so ancient.
Oh yeah, and like we could actually pull up a MySQL database in this, and it'll give you a nice interface just like this.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
So yeah,
Yeah.
there's definitely a lot of
But
options to dig into data. You just have to unfortunately know which thing to connect to which thing.
right, yeah.
The other thing I like about this is autocomplete has kind of been a thing for coding, like in JavaScript, C#, Java, and that type of stuff with IDEs and Vim and command line for a while. But it's really kind of a newer capability that's been added to SQL and CQL type code.
Yeah.
Partly because I'm trying to think of anyway, it's basically a backward syntax. It's harder for the system to introspect against what it's running against. But they have it set up in here, which is pretty cool. So like if I do select star, and then just start typing like star from. First, I have to use some of the correct syntax. So there, it knows that it has those two things in the database. Those are the two key spaces, so I can pick one. And then dot, and it has the table list, which is pretty nice.
Yeah, that's great. It's IntelliSense.
Right, exactly. I think
Awesome.
IntelliSense is Microsoft copyright, but yes, it's the same thing.
Yeah. 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 I'm so used to VS Code or VSTS. So
Yeah.
that's like instantly where my mind goes.
So in here, it's nice too, because then you get the list of all the columns that you have in the database, and a bunch of other stuff too. I was just looking. How did I do it earlier? There's a way you can just hit like Control Space or something, and it'll list out. Oh, it's actually, that's what I'll do next. So let's say you want to insert some data. We're going to insert some data into Trux. So insert into Trux, and then, what is it? No. Oh, values. That's it. And then parens. Oh, I didn't do it there either. Well, phooey. Oh, that's because I need to do this. No? All right, I'm going to look it up because I've just spaced on it. Cassandra insert statement. So when doing an insert in Cassandra, I could have sworn that's what I just typed. Oh, that's right. So say insert into this, and here's where the other parens go. So if you're in the parens with DataGrip and you hit Control Space, the first option, which is great for inserts because you need to insert every column of data, right? You just hit Control Space and it gives you every single one of the options and immediately puts it into the parens. So then when you come down to values, you know what to put in here. So we'll start with what's one of the trucks in Charlotte? Is there a cool one?
The dumpling lady.
Yeah, cool. Oh, I should add URI to that. The dumpling lady. Okay, so we'll go with the dumpling lady. And then what's our next thing? We need a phone number. Oh, of course, I find something that doesn't have a phone number. What's the, oh wait, maybe on menu?
Let me
Maybe
see.
on locations?
It is 980-595-6174.
980
595
595.
6174.
There you go. So if you're in Charlotte, everybody, go get some dumpling lady dumplings. You give them a call.
So good. It's like my favorite.
So there's UUID. And then, is this just the category of dumpling, or is it particular types of dumplings?
She mainly does like meat dumplings and vegetarian dumplings.
Cool.
But, I mean, it's
Shekawat.
basic. Yeah.
Yep, it's happening again. It is happening again. I am now hungry. I had barbecue before getting on the stream because I knew I was going to get hungry talking about food at some point, and sure enough. Oh, let's see here. I'm gonna put the same thing for this. There we go. All right. So this should be an okay statement. And since I have two statements in this console, I'm going to do a semicolon to end that one and a semicolon to end this one. You'll see that I'm calling a function UUID, which should give us a UUID to put into the ID. That way we don't have to come up with a crazy UUID ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the rest are basically text, details. Oh, details is actually a map. So I need to do it this way. This will actually look familiar in a second if I do it right. So it's basically like boom. Oh, I don't need that many. There we go. Yeah, okay. So basically this is a JSON object blurb.
Right.
Blob, blurb, whatever. Almost the same meaning. So we can put, this is just one key and value. We could put a billion of them. It doesn't matter. So let's see here. Right now we have nothing. You'll also notice one of the things I did. I just selected override of the select keyword. So I selected with my mouse the select statement, and then I hit the play or execute. You can also use Control Enter, little shortcut key. But that just runs only the one statement, right?
Cool. Yeah.
And we see nothing in the table right now, but then if I select this statement and run it, all right, invalid set literal for this stuff. What did I do wrong? So did I do, let's go read the docs again. Insert map Cassandra. Isn't that what I did? Oh, I did comma. It's colon.
Also, it's not in quotes, right?
The overall object is not. It's
Mhm.
in braces, but the items within that are. But only because,
I
uh,
thought the key was not in quotes.
right. But here I have declared this map as a text for the key and a text for the value.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, and over here they just had a. Well, it doesn't show where it's created the table, but basically they have an int for or maybe a
Oh,
year
and
or
these
something
are
like that.
numbers anyway, so
Yeah, so they just did int and value versus where I did text and text.
yeah.
Can you hear the dog?
I do. Whose is that?
There is a very, very large dog outside, and everyone's very happy to see the dog. It's very happy to see them. So let's hear that ran right? Completed in 10 milliseconds. Okay, so theoretically, boom, there we go. We have some data in the table now. So in here you can see how it stored it in here like this, which always kind of strikes me a little funny that it ends up being, well, stored this way versus something like that. But whatever it
Yeah,
takes. And then
weird.
here's
I've
our,
heard that.
yeah, and here's our crazy ID. So we have a nice, good UUID.
So if you had multiple key values within details, it would essentially print out just a new line within details, within that details column.
Well, let's see here. I believe, let's just make another one. Now I'm going to do an upsert here. This is a thing where because it's the same primary key,
Mm-hmm.
dumpling lady and phone, I'll do an insert. And it should have updated the column. Yep. So it just overwrote that, right? So there's our new key with new value. So it comma delimits it inside of that, which is kind of weird. But
Yeah, I wish it would, go on to the next line, but I get it.
yeah. Well, and also this is purely results based stuff. Like even if we had say it was a bunch of text that was HTML, but it didn't actually have line breaks. It just had like breaks or something. It would just still all be jammed together. But that's just the results.
Plus on the front end, if I were to look at this on the front end, it would do that for me, right? As long as I had some sort of like JSON.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that brings up a good point in all of this. So as we had discussed previously with the Go, building out a Go services tier, what we will do is we'll actually have Go services that will take the request from the front end and then provide back the specific data that the front end wants, right? And then the services tier will manage executing the CQL and all these specific things and parsing it apart however it needs to be and then handing it over. And then final determination of how it's displayed would be determined by the user interface code bits. So in this case, like you'd break it out to whatever JSON object, and then you could just take just the value pieces or something like that, like and display it however you'd want it on the screen.
Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds similar to GraphQL.
Yes, very much. I almost ran off into the weeds there. We'll talk about GraphQL in the future.
I saw you stop yourself.
I know I have a tendency sometimes. I try to stay on the tracks. I did that teaching the course last week. I was getting into answering the questions and half the class started to derail into the weeds. We were having a good time, but we were definitely getting off into the weeds. So I had to rope everybody back in there. All right, so
Disox said, if I recall correctly, it recommends to limit to 64,000 key pairs.
yeah, and really within a thing like that, you probably don't want to really even get close to that.
Yeah.
I would
I mean,
definitely
that's
keep
a
it.
lot.
Yeah, it's a bit much because in this situation, you're pulling out details from a query that may have like a million rows already. So if each details map in there has 64,000 key pairs, that's 64,000 times a million rows of data. So that's a pretty big number.
Yeah.
That's a lot to deal with. So yeah, usually like in this case, it seems like a pretty easy thing to use for this because we're not going to have 64,000 pieces of information about the food cart. We're not like tracking the types of bolts that are used in the food cart or something. It's just the food, maybe a little details about the menu, and we'd probably even have a table that's specific to the menu itself.
Mhm.
Um, so it's a little extra pertinent data about the food cart is all that would be put in there. Maybe like a link to an avatar picture or something too that shows the like the dumpling logo or something.
Yeah.
So let's see here. As you can see too here with data grip, like I've opened this. This is the directory inside of our actual project. Um, you
Oh, I
don't,
didn't know that.
yeah, you don't really see anything else around it because in this particular context, the only thing data grip cares about is the database queries stuff and the schema.
Cool.
So I have done this, and I'll show you just real quick here. And I really wish I had added a terminal, and I can't remember what the terminal. Now I really kind of want to see what I did with it. In all the other JetBrains stuff, there's a terminal that you just pull up. But in DataGrip, there isn't a ready terminal because generally you're not doing this via the terminal. You're trying to do it via console commands like this.
Hmm.
But anyway, so that's there, and I can easily get rid of it all and go back to working on other things by just going in here and saying dev down, boom. So and that is going to go through, takes just a second, and it stops Cassie Trux, then deletes Cassie Trux, and then deletes TruxNet. So I have it do it in order because it has to remove the container instances running before it
Hmm.
can delete the actual network. Because if you try to delete the network while stuff is bound to it and running, it'll not let you delete the network.
Mm.
So now if I go look though, Docker PS, nope, nothing there. Docker network, all cleaned up. Now,
Cool.
as things go, the way I do it, I like to clean it up to another level. And I'm just going to point this out. This isn't super, super important. But if you look at all of the containers that you've ever started, these are other ones that I've started. But you'll notice that I even deleted the actual premise that the container existed because I just want everything blown away to start completely from scratch whenever I run it again to start doing that stuff. So again, dev up, boom, the environment's back and I can start working with it again. At some point,
Wait,
and
sorry. When do you need to do this?
um, so the context is, and this may be pertinent to how I work on a lot of things because I have so many different stacks that I'm working with.
Mhm.
Um, I bring up the environment and I tear it down every time I go from project to project.
Okay.
So that's really kind of the big reason that I do this.
Mhm.
If you're only working on one or two projects at a time during the course of a day, you can leave this stuff running and it's really not a big deal. Like I think it's using like a meg of memory or something.
Mhm.
Dramatically less than Slack, for example.
Yeah.
But like I routinely during the course of the day is I'll work on this and then I'll work on the C# one and then I'll end up working on another one and then I'll work on like something else. So like I like to make sure that as much of my environment is known so that I can troubleshoot very easily. So I always tear down whatever I have previously been working on and then build it back up. And the easiest way to do that is to use Docker, because none of it stays put once I wipe it out.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah. And happy to dive into all that stuff much deeper anytime you want to. We can do it on Twitch or whenever. Just scream at me on Slack, and happy to go into details. So that covered the concepts behind schema migration, what I was doing so far, and then really kind of what we need to do is let's go back in here and let's do something semi-boring. And I'm going to actually close this. And I didn't put WebStorm over there. Let me open up WebStorm real quick. And I guess
WebStorm cost money?
Yeah, I think it's like $80 maybe, or less.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember I've forgotten the pricing. Oh yeah, see, I opened this up and here's some other project that I was working on. So sometimes I'm kind of a mess. Oh, I didn't want to. Okay, there it goes. Oh, that is what I wanted. I wanted Trux. I'm trying to open Trux. Anyway, I have now opened up our project here with all the cool Material View plugin features. I love the Material View logos or icons.
Mm-hmm.
Oops. And there is our migrations folder with our CQL. And in WebStorm, it has a lot of the features of Data Grip that we just looked at. It uses a lot of the core same plugins and downloads for the drivers and that kind of thing. So I can even go out here and like connect to that specific one. But with all that added and all our different things here, I need to merge all this stuff together and figure out where we are on our PRs. And we'll go ahead and get those merged. So let's hear migrations, get status. Oh, what did I do? Oh, I don't really want to do that. Ah, yes. I will show you one other thing that I wanted to show you that makes life even simpler. Let's say, well, did I spin up that environment again and leave it running? I did, cool. So TruxNet is there, and we should have, let me refresh this. Did that not exist? Run this. There we go. There we go.
Cool.
Okay, so it just put trucks and users in there that I had done before. But one of the things you can do, and this you can do this from DataGrip or WebStorm, if you right-click on Apache Cassandra and say New, you can just create a key space or table or entity, or you want to change for an index or anything like that, and boom, you get the basic skeleton of the create script right here. Most of the create scripts, all but key space, are actually executable from that dialog. So let's say I'm in the source system of record key space and I want to create a table. This one, it starts with create table, and then I'll just say, all right, I want to add a column. I call this the ID, make it a UUID type. And then for some reason I want to, let's say, timestamp thing. We'll call it a or what is it? Stamp? Yeah, timestamp. And see, it gives you all of it's auto completing all this stuff for me, right? Like I'm not having to think too hard about it. I just am able to quickly add the things I want. Some
Yeah,
data here, text. Let's make that the primary key. And then I don't really want another table. We'll just go with 3 columns. So you'll see here too, since it's just a single thing, it says, okay, this is the primary key. I think I can also do this and say new table key, primary key 2, select primary key. And like I'm just doing kind of crazy stuff right now. Let's say I want to add an index. Sure, that sounds great. And you'll see down here, it added all of that stuff for us. So it's a great way to add tables, edit tables, just tweak your data schema really quickly without having to remember every single little pedantic detail about CQL. So it comes in really handy. And I think this one might actually break though, because I just did. Yeah, of course. You can only have one primary key. So sometimes if you do enough wild things, it'll get a little confused. But that one should work. Cannot create secondary index on partition. Oh yeah. Let's just do that. Oh yes. Let me name it something unique. There we go. And then there it is. Ta-da. Oh, it actually created. I guess I hit create on one of the other things when I was going through it, but it created both of our tables here, and then you can drop it too, and it'll come up. It'll give you the drop statement, and then wipe out the table. So that's a great way to be able to go through and create the scripts without, like I said, needing to know every pedantic detail of the script. It gets you going really quick because it generates the skeletons out there for you so you can fill it all out.
very cool. Definitely looks more intuitive.
Yeah, it beats the heck out of trying to write CQL from memory.
Yeah, we did that. We wrote it out in the terminal during boot camp.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't super fun, but good practice.
Yeah. Let's see here. So I am on this, and then I have all 3 branches. I have your branch, or I'm sorry, your fork, my fork, and then upstream, which is the Riptano one. So if I do git pull all, must have done that a minute ago. So it should have all of our respective branches and everything. And then your latest one was material design, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see here. Git merge material design. Yes, that is what I mean. Thank you, Git.
Actually, why don't you do the Christina branch, because I ended up merging the material into my branch.
Oh, you went Christina, material design back to Christina?
Yeah.
Okay. Words. Yes. Looks great. Cool. I love seeing this. It always makes me happy.
Yeah.
And especially when it doesn't say bunches of stuff for you to figure out. Yeah. All right, so we're ahead by 7 commits. All right, what's my command to run this?
Git push.
Oh, I mean the app itself.
So view space UI.
Oh, do I have to run npm or yarn?
Do a npm install because I added the Google Maps and stuff.
Okay. I wonder what that said a minute ago. It looked like it said some really weird stuff. I didn't pay attention to it. Moderate. Not no. What is that supposed to mean? Not supported? Oh, unsupported platform. Oh, that's stuff we've had, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so then it's like, what is it? npm run or something?
Do view space UI.
Starting GUI. I feel like I should do this.
And then,
Should it have a map?
well, I think it's still starting.
Oh, it is. It's doing something. Oh, it said error running npm. Oh, that's that other thing.
You should have, wait, open it up again.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it's.
Yeah, should be the GUI, that had essentially the dashboard.
Mm-hmm.
So that's weird.
I wonder if
You could also just do npm run serve, which will just start it up. Start it up.
was it 8,000?
Yeah. 8080 is the project, and then 8000 is the GUI.
Oh, so 8080 should be. Okay.
Oh, that's it. So that's the GUI.
Yeah, and 8080 is
8080
can't be reached.
So go back to the GUI, what you just had.
All right.
Okay.
It says no open project. So open project?
I've never seen it from this side. I feel like it should have the Trux one, right?
Yeah, I would think so.
Maybe just try creating and see what happens.
What did I just do? Oh, I just clicked on a tab because, yep. All right, create. Oh. It's in the directory, which is kind of weird. Create new project here. How about?
I think you want to go up a level.
Yeah.
Go to codes. Actually, I don't know. Maybe you should just do npm run serve.
Yeah, let me go back out here. So it says this. I'm wondering if check cables and reboot any routers. Okay,
So
Chrome.
with the GUI, you've got to actually run the server from the GUI for 8080 to start. But for some reason, it's not identifying it for you. Maybe I'll have to look more into it. Maybe we both on our end have to create our own folders for that GUI to start.
Oh, yeah. That could be possible. Did it not like that? I thought it liked that.
But yeah, do npm run serve.
It feels like it's working at something this time. It seemed like last time it went too fast somehow. Oh, interesting. There we go. I love that feature. I'm going to click on that like 8,000 times. Derrida? Cool. So, whoa. Are these actual carts that you have in here?
Yes.
Sweet. Roaming Fork Bistro on wheels. That's cool. Do most of the carts in Charlotte actually get to stay put, or do they have to move around a lot?
It's funny, like some move around. I mean, most of them are mobile, but some like these, for example, are stationary. So
Okay.
yeah,
That's
like
one of the things.
post up there, you know?
Yeah. Seattle has a bunch of carts, but they can't they have to be mobile first off. They can't be completely stationary. And they basically have to schedule where they're going to be with the city or something like that. There's like I'm not exactly sure how the rule is, but they basically have to show up at a different block or different area at least once or twice a week. Or like they
Uh,
can't go to the same place every day, which is
oh,
kind of
interesting.
weird. Um, Meanwhile, like if you go down to Portland, like 98% of the carts are in a cart trailer and they're stationary. So like you know exactly which block to go to, you know which carts are going to be there because they're there all the time.
Yeah. So that's the same essentially.
Yeah. Cool. I'm loving this already. So we just need to implement that and the other feature and this thing and we're
Yeah.
done.
It's very bare bones.
I love it. And
Yeah,
then
nothing's wired up yet, so
in this whole part of town being under construction right here.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Basically all of Charlotte is under construction.
That sounds like most US cities right now are just completely under construction.
Yeah, it's nonstop.
Ugh. I bet if I went to New Orleans though, it would be practically the same as it was when I went 10 years ago. It's very reliable like that. They also decided they weren't going to build any more tall buildings because they're all sinking,
Yeah.
which is a
What's the
problem.
point?
Yeah, exactly. It's like we got to cut this out. They're all going to sink in 30 years anyway or fall over. So,
Yeah.
all right. With all that said, let's
Part
think.
my cat hand.
What is our next steps here? So we got our basic. We need to firm up the data layer / services / data base. I'm going to do a little bit of that between now and when we meet next,
Mhm.
which I believe is Friday, if I recall, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Do you remember what time?
Same time.
Same time?
Oh wait,
Is it?
no, we moved it up.
Cool. Yeah, because I didn't want to.
It's not on the calendar yet.
It's not? Oh, I totally put it there, right? Isn't it
I
May
think
3rd?
instead of like 3 to 5 my
Oh,
time.
we we aren't doing it this Friday because I'm going to run ML for all.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so that kicks off. um, but yeah,
Conference.
it keeps sneaking up on me too. I keep forgetting it's this weekend.
That was like me when Flurix conference was approaching. I was like, oh wait, I can't because I'm running a conference.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, whoops, sorry, big large thing I have to do.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, the third, yeah. So the 3rd and the 7th are our next two, which will be Friday, May 3rd, and then
Mhm.
Tuesday, May 7th. And the Friday one is at 10:30 a.m. PDT, and the Tuesday one is at 12:20 p.m. PDT.
So the 30th, I will be doing Cassandra Day.
Cool.
And the third, I'll be coming back from Georgia.
Oh,
So might have to refactor it a little.
okay. I'll tell
Um,
you what. That is, we'll figure that out offline.
yeah.
um, yeah. So the next one is close to around that time. We will have it up on the event calendar for anybody watching. So be sure to check that out. Click on the remind me, and you'll get a reminder. The next thing the DataStax channel has scheduled is the C# hour, which is tomorrow. That's with yours truly. Um, I'll be doing a little bit of this, like the data schema stuff that we were doing just now. I'll be doing a little bit of that, but also digging into the C# driver and how the driver works with the database. So
Cool.
that should be interesting for people interested
What time's
in.
that going to be?
It's going to be at 10 a.m.
Cool.
So yeah, Ancient Coder. I expect to see you there. I know you're going to come hang out.
Yeah,
Uh,
hanging
and
out.
then this evening I'll actually be streaming on my channel too, but that's going to be gear for streaming meetups because tonight is the Seattle Scalability Meetup, and I'm going to be talking about some database stuff at the meetup, and I also have another person coming in there talking about Lambda functions, serverless functions on the Alibaba cloud. So that'll be new territory for me.
Cool.
And with that, we'll jump offline and see everybody next stream.
Cool. Thanks for hanging.
Cheers, everybody.